going to mute everyone so we could just actually start the conference. So, perfect. So, I'm going to just give the mic, the invisible mic, to Charlie to basically introduce our speaker of the day, Daniel Notkin, who's a restaurateur, a host, oyster shocker, and promoter of ocean sustainability, to talk to us about nature. So, Charlie, the mic is yours. And guys, enjoy your conference and we'll be back soon.
Oui, salut tout le monde, merci Nogol pour cette belle animation. Donc aujourd'hui, le thème du mois, c'était nature. Donc on s'est demandé finalement comment est-ce qu'on pouvait avoir plus de compassion pour notre environnement. C'était pas mal la question qu'on avait envie, qu'on avait envie d'adresser finalement ce mois-ci. Et donc, comme le disait très bien Nogol, notre conférencier ce mois-ci est à la fois restaurateur, très reconnu dans le monde entier pour être un champion du monde de l'écaillage d'huîtres, mais il est avant tout promoteur de la durabilité des océans. S'il vous plaît, je vous demanderai de faire un maximum de bruit pour accueillir Daniel Notkin.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Is this me? Do we start up?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to have a little slideshow, and we're going to try this technology here with everybody. Welcome, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you, Charlie. I'm very humbled to be here, a humble little oyster shucker, trying to talk to everybody and inspire everyone about the ocean and sustainability and passion. So let me get my little thing together. So as they have mentioned, my name is Daniel Notkin. Hold on, let me start. All right, let's start off with my life in oysters. So I am Daniel Notkin. I am an oyster shucker. I am a humble representative of the oyster. Now, how the heck does someone get into oysters? Very ridiculous little thing with a great history. That is my little bum sitting right in the ocean looking for some creature. Actually, I'm holding a little crab. I didn't even see. I'm holding a little crab. I'm searching the ocean. And that is I've had that ever since I was a kid. I love every nuance of nature. I love insects. I love the ocean. I love all of it. But how do we come to love something? What is passion? Now, a lot of people think that passion is your love of something. A lot of people think passion is the thing that brings you joy. In fact, the very interesting root of passion is that it comes from the Latin word pati, which means to suffer. So the passion isn't the thing that you love necessarily. It is also the thing that you suffer for. And your compassion is participating in the suffering of something, being part of it. But how do we get to that point? Well, from a very young, early age, I was very lucky. My family, my grandfather was a very well-known doctor. My great uncle was the inventor of the birth control pill. In fact, that is actually a picture of him. That is Goody Pincus, who invented the birth control pill, who I'm named for. And so I have this big science background. My father was in pre-med, and he left that to go into film and become an artist. And so from him, I learned all about stories, and I learned about art and nature and the beauty of the ocean, which we're going to get to. And also my grandmothers were amazing cooks, and my mother was an amazing cook. So I had this complete experience. Now, my grandmother was a Bostonian, and she loves Boston. And so my great uncle bought her a little summer house in the very beautiful little small town down by that little point of Gloucester, Massachusetts. Now, Gloucester, Massachusetts is actually the first fishing port in the New World, 1638. That is where all of America was supplied. Their seafood, even up until just a few years ago, all seafood in North America came, well, not the West Coast, all seafood for our East Coast came into Gloucester and then was shipped to everywhere else. So I spent every summer down by the beach in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and I was super fortunate to spend this time on this beach that is, I think, the most beautiful beach I've ever been on for a number of reasons. That's little me with a beautiful bluefin tuna back when they were plentiful and the ocean was full of them. And I still remember that to this day. This is the beach. This is the beautiful, picturesque, tranquil beach. Now, this beach had a very fascinating, unique aspect to it. If you see off on the right of your screen a little bit, there is an island. And the water at low tide would recede. And there would be a sandbar that would magically appear, leading you out to this island, like a voyage to Narnia of this beautiful, my own private Galapagos island. And every day I would go out to this beautiful little island and I would have my, well, we eventually put on some gear, but my fingers were very scratched up from digging under stones and rocks to get lobsters and crabs. And you'll actually even see here, this is the beautiful voyage on the way out to this island that magically appears. And I would come out here and kids from the city would come up for their day at the beach. And I would go out to the corners of this little island and I would dig for lobsters or crabs or sea urchins or starfish. And I would show the kids that life existed just a few feet away, that this magical world of the things that we actually found in grocery stores actually existed out there. And in this video, you're gonna see I managed to go out with one hand and a camera in one hand. And this was my everyday, is what you're about to see right here. I'm gonna. Sure. A beautiful little lobster. I'm gonna pinch me a little bit. I didn't catch exactly right. And that's what you do. You just let them go back in the water, and there it goes. And that's where nature came from. That is where my enjoyment of all of it. Now, I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a kid. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to go into film as well. I did my undergrad in biopsych pre-med. I was going to be a neuropsychologist, neurosurgeon. I did my grad school and MFA in creative writing for novels and screenplays, because I said, if I look back in 10 years, would I regret being a doctor? Would I regret being a writer? Who knew the third option would be oyster shucker? That's fine. That's where we get to. So I did all that. And when I came back to Montreal, I got involved in restaurants. And I got involved in a restaurant that was Kaizen, which was one of the top sushi restaurants in Montreal at the time, legendary. And I was immediately thrown into the role as general manager. And I did my time there. And I'm going to digress for 1 second. And I'm going to tell you a story about espresso, because this is a story that changed my life to a degree. These are the moments that manifest. So I was at the restaurant. We had an espresso machine that had made 1 million coffees. And the owner said to me, oh, can you, get the guy's going to come in and fix it. Can you organize it? So the guy came in, he fiddled with it and did it and left. And the owner came to me, who was a very, very tough guy, and especially tough to me, but I appreciate everyone in their own way. And he said, did he fix it? And I said, yeah, I think he fixed it. He came in. Well, he laced into me. How do you know? You don't know anything. You didn't do it. Now, a lot of people would take offense at that. But I stopped. I took a little offense, but I stopped and I said, you know what? He's right. I just trusted that he came and did it. So for the next 4 days, I researched every single thing about espresso. I researched the grind, I researched the temperature, I researched the pressure and everything, and I called him back in. And he came back and he said, oh, I was just here a couple days ago. I said, yeah, my temperature is off 3 degrees, my pressure is off 1 bar, my grind is wrong. And he cowered a little bit and he fixed the machine and it worked beautifully. Cut to a few years later, when I left Kaizen, they actually asked me to come back. And one of the things they asked me to do was to open the raw bar. Now I knew about lobsters and shrimp and crabs, but I knew nothing about oysters. I'd only had oysters once before in my life. I had never opened an oyster. There were no oysters in Gloucester, so I didn't know anything about that. But I began to learn everything about oysters. I would go down to Joe Beef before it was Joe Beef and sit with my mentor, John Bill, who taught me everything about oysters and would rattle off things like Mercenaria. And I thought, how cool was that he knows the Latin name of seafood just off the top of his head. Now, Mercenaria also is actually a clam. How cool is that? What a neat name. So I learned everything. My sister was actually a champion oyster shucker, and she taught me a whole bunch about plating and about opening oysters, so tons of things. We did wine pairings. That's me in my nerdy little suit. We did makeshift tables of oysters, and I began to do everything about oysters. When I left Kaizen, there was no such thing as raw bars, really. There was 2 places in the city that served oysters, and my friends had a restaurant, and I said, you know what, let's do one night of oysters. So I got into oysters. And that's me with my little oyster setup where I have my little baskets that I have, and we'd make shift, and I'd set up at a corner of the bar and I'd do oysters. Now, when I chose to do oysters, as I do in my life, I chose to do the more difficult thing. I chose the passion of it. It would be easy to do one type of oyster and just present the oyster, and the financials would have been a lot better. But in the long run, I knew this was the right thing to do. I would always have a few kinds of oysters, not just one. And I would go up to each table and present them, and I would tell you about them. Why? Because of the relationship that I want you to have with what you are experiencing. They're not just oysters. This one's a pickle point. This one's a Beausoleil. This one's a Kumamoto. And they're all different. They're all unique. You can go anywhere in the world for oysters now, but you could only come to me for that experience. And anytime you thought of oysters, I wanted you to think about that experience, because I can't make you care about 1 million oysters in a bay. I can give you some topics about it. I can't make you viscerally care about it, but I can make you, if I can make you care about one oyster, then you start to get the picture. Then we start to have a relationship, that tangible, visceral relationship. And this oyster existed before that moment. It existed before as part of the history of the world, and it would continue to exist as a memory and a lesson that would be carried on and replicated and repeated, that would be carried from one person to another person, that'd be loved by 2 people, then thousands, and so on. And here's what I would tell you about the oysters if they were in front of me. That's me carrying oysters because I didn't have a car. I would run from one side of the old port to the other side of the old port with 40 pounds of oysters on my shoulders. I would stop off and trade some oysters for shots of vodka with Jess at Garde Manger, and I would keep going about my day. And this is a beautiful plate of oysters. So on this plate of oysters, here's what I would tell you. The first oysters you're going to see there are going to be beautiful Beausoleil oysters, and they're from New Brunswick, and they have this light little beautiful butteriness on them, and they're going to melt in your mouth with just a bit of brown salt. The following ones over on the other side in that thick green beautiful shell are going to be Wellfleets from Wellfleet, Massachusetts, and they have this beautiful complexity. They're going to have this seagrass character, a light little butteriness, and they're going to taste of the depth of where they're grown, which is 30 feet down, and they are a beautiful complex oyster. Finally, those little beautiful ones up on top are Kumamotos. They're their own species, Chrysostrus akema from Taylor shellfish, and they are the Pinot Noir of oysters with just a hint of cucumber and seaweed that dance back and forth like a beautiful little ballet. That would be how I would talk about oysters. Now, enough about me. Let's talk and continue about our oysters and the stars of the show. Here are some nerdy facts about oysters that you can rattle off at your next dinner party and seem like you are the coolest person in the world, because all heroes bring oysters. Oysters do not grow in the ocean. They do not grow in rivers. They grow in estuaries where the rivers meet the ocean, and their job is to filter plankton and phytoplankton and algae out of the water. Each oyster filters 50 gallons a day. So that means a bay of 1 million oysters. And this is New Brunswick and our friends at Beausoleil, and there's about 10 million oysters in there. So if you filter 50 gallons of water a day, you are filtering 500 million gallons of water a day. Just to give you an idea what an oyster does. And these waters are pristine, and that is what the oyster's job is. And as we consider nature and the holistic nature of oysters and our environment, if the oysters are filtering this water, their job is to filter it so that the light is able to penetrate down to the sandy bottom. And that sandy bottom, little seagrass is able to grow. And if that seagrass is able to grow, then the little fish come in. And if the little fish come in, then the bigger fish come in. And suddenly we have created a whole environment. Now, oysters are also 265 million years old, so they've been doing this job a long time. The Romans were the first ones to aquaculture oysters. They loved their oysters so much that they would wrap them up in bags and take them on behind of their ships when they went on their invasion campaign, so they would always have oysters around them. And in fact, the key seat of democracy, which is the Romans and the Greeks, they would decide who stayed and who left based on the vote taken with oyster shells. And what do we call that word? It's to ostracize someone, which comes from the Latin ostria and an oyster, so oyster shells. Now, in the 1900s, oysters went through what our fish are going through right now. The invention of the steam engine and dredging allowed oysters to just be decimated. All the wild oysters were pulled out of the ground. There's a 26-mile reef of oysters off New York that they never thought they could ever go through. And then in 40 years, they ate the entire reef and 1 billion oysters. Now we come to the south, and where the steam engine and the oysters grow more quickly. And they were so plentiful that these are the people that got to shuck the oysters as well. Little Rosie, at 7 years old, was an oyster shucker, as were so many children, and they would wear little tags telling them how many oysters they were able to shuck. These are the kids in the mounds of oyster shells, and they'd take them out of school, or they'd start them before school. In these oyster houses, where sometimes the boredom and the laboriousness of the job got you, they started the shucking competitions, and the competitions were fun competitions between each of the shuckers to see who could shuck faster and best. And so we cut back to present day and how I got into competitions, which I was not a competitive guy, but my sister, who had that life before me and was a competitive oyster shucker, said, you know what, I'm going to a shucking competition. You should come. It's going to be a fun oyster fest in Ottawa. I said, okay, but I'm not really competitive. I guess I'll compete maybe. So I went, I competed. We had an amazing day. I came 5th place. And following all that, after 9 years, we have about 70 oyster shucking competitions. I have 23 first place finishes, including 3 wins at the Raspberry Point Invitational, 1 win in China at the 2019 World Invitational. I've come 5th in the world and 7th in the world. I was the 2016 Canadian champion. In addition to that, we have our beautiful Guinness World Record that we have right here for the team of 10 to shuck the most oysters in an hour. Our team did 8,880 oysters. Just to show you that it is very hard and not all fun and games, this was my hand after 950 oysters in an hour. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of passion and a lot of suffering. So the competitions are fascinating also because the competitions are not against someone else. The competitions are against yourself and against the oyster. And when you begin to understand that, you take a responsibility for it and passion for it, how fast and how clean you can do the oysters justice. So after that, I started my own oyster fest, and this was our very first year. We had 150 people show up. I spent $10,000. I said, we can't leave Montreal off the map. We're an international city. We should have a festival. So I broke even, 150 people showed up. 9 years later, we have 6,000 people that come to our fest. We go through 25,000 oysters, and we have an amazing time. So where does that leave us? Where do we come to? What can I leave you with after this amazing, beautiful journey of talking about oysters and the environment? There is a beauty to everything. Each of these oysters and those shells are just spectacularly lovely. Very much like those lobsters and crabs back on the beach as a kid, it occurs to me that for many of us, nature has become that thing that exists outside ourselves. We've put up walls and estranged ourselves from it. We have built our cities around us, and we have made it something very separate. We have removed ourselves from our food, from where it comes from what we need to make sure we still have it for years to come. We have hidden ourselves as well from the damage we've done. But the good news is that now more than ever, with technology and intercommunication, we have the ability to educate ourselves, to be connected, and to make a united change. But we need to rethink our models of being consumers. We need to think our plastics, overfishing, responsible fishing gear, products not harvested by slave labor as they are sometimes Southeast Asia. We need to be better and more aware consumers. And isn't it a funny thing that we have gotten comfortable calling ourselves consumers? We don't even think about it. We don't call ourselves creators. We don't call ourselves equalizers. We are consumers. That's all we are. We need to wipe the slate clean, take a step back, eliminate the waste, and move forward with sustainable measures that deliver products and methods that will guarantee us for 1,000 years to come. There's a giant sign hanging above the earth right now that says not responsible for lost or stolen objects. People have avoided responsibility, and now we need to take responsibility. And foresight is hard work. A year ago, if I had talked to you guys about a pandemic and being ready or prepared for what might come, almost no one in the Western world would have even considered the threat of a pandemic. Coincidentally, when I was in undergrad, one of my classes was in greatly neglected diseases, and it was about the inevitability of pandemics. But I guarantee you that without demanding change, without making the change, as people who demand the food that we have and being aware of it, we will face a pandemic of oceanographic proportions if we don't make those changes. And you can make those changes. So you can go to fishmongers that you trust, some great ones. You can go down those great paths. You can pick sustainable fish. These are some of our friends in the city that you can go to, and they will lead you with sustainable fish. Pick sustainable fish. Don't go for bluefin tuna. It's not that sustainable anymore. Fresh albacore is just as amazing. Buy from places that you trust and believe in and people you do, because don't make no mistake, nature doesn't really need our help. It can do fine. All it needs is for us to just get out of the way a little bit more. So by inspiring people to care about even one aspect of the puzzle, we can emerge victorious. I can't tell you which oyster will be your favorite. I can't tell you which part of this story you're going to find the most fascinating. But if I give you as much as I can, with a lot of the sweet and some of the bitter, I can only hope you'll find something in there for yourself. So thank you to the whole Creative Mornings team. Thank you, Charlie, for being my mentor. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. I am humbled and honored to be invited. Go out forth, make great change and great choices. We also, our documentary Shuckers will be available on Vimeo today, and those profits will go towards our restaurant friends and keeping them in business, and so they can help you make great choices as well. I hope that was great, everyone. Thank you.
Je peux poser une question directement?
There you go. You can hear me?
Yep.
So thank you so much, Daniel. I loved your story. You say it with so much enthusiasm and passion. But I particularly like your environmental message. And I'm involved with an organization called the Jellyfish Project.
Oh, yes.
And we send musicians across Canada. They do a rock show to high schools, and then we talk about the environment through the power of music. We motivate the students to change their habits of consumption and help find solutions. So my question to you is, what can the restaurant industry do, or what is the restaurant industry doing to share your environmental message and help create a front or a movement? And the second part of that is, how do we know which restaurants we can trust? Because you say, go to the restaurants you trust. Right. How do we know who to trust?
Listen, those are great questions. And the tough thing as we talk about how do we make change is, some of our change has to come from consumers, eaters, because they have to make those changes. But the change, I think, really, we have to take everything off the kitchen counter. We have to give it a wipe down, and we have to replace everything. So the people in the middle have to start making these changes, and we're starting to see it. The interesting thing about this pandemic is we have fishermen that are shipping now right to people. So that's great. You know your fishermen, you know where it's coming. If you talk about restaurants, we're very lucky here in Montreal that most restaurants are pretty sustainable about it. And they're pretty aware of what they're getting. So it comes to a harder point when you get to the restaurants that are accessible to most people, the more inexpensive restaurants, because prices are going up, seafood's going up. We do need to take a step back and reevaluate the economics. And this isn't the consumer side, this is the middleman and the top side. How do we deliver a product that is sustainable for a long time to come, that makes it available for people? But we have to also start promoting the fish that not a lot of people eat that might not be so attractive. So, you can have dogfish, which a lot of people are eating. You know, there's some other fish that are much more that we should really start investigating rather than just the big name fish like salmon and tuna. If we switch off a little bit, we're going to spread it out, you know, and there's an ongoing debate as well about farmed fish. Some are doing it really well. One of my favorite farmed fish is the Faroe Island salmon, because they basically live in the wild. But it's a very intricate debate. And so I think you can educate yourself and say, okay, pick a couple of different fish that you might like, go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium or Oceanwise sites and say, I like these fish.
Oceanwise.
Yeah, you go to a couple and you pick a few fish that you like, or look up and just say, hey, you know, Google search on what is a fish that underused fish, you know, that's available. Albacore tuna, like I mentioned, is one of my favorite fresh fish, but we don't get any of it. And not a lot of people buy because it's less attractive, but it's a fantastic fish.
Daniel, it was so good. It was really amazing to hear you. When are you starting your YouTube channel?
So I do have a YouTube channel. You can go look up Daniel Notkin on YouTube. I am remiss in adding all my stuff to it, but that is part of my, after I've worked somewhat diligently and frustrated Charlie a bit on my speech and my irresponsibility, that is going to be my goal this week. So I just have to imagine I have Charlie over my shoulder to get my YouTube channel all together and the videos loaded.
Amazing.
And Boyana was one of my first introductions to Creative Mornings years ago, and she came and actually volunteer shucked at my restaurant when I had it, and she shucks at Montreal Oyster Fest as well. So she's a ringer.
À vrai dire, c'est même Boyana qui m'a dit hey, il faut absolument que tu fasses venir Daniel à Creative Morning, il va être incroyable. Et puis, le voici. Je vais tout de suite passer la parole à Edmond. Voilà, je te mets la vidéo en vedette. Tu peux te unmuter puis parler quand tu veux.
Okay, hello, Daniel. Thank you very much. It's a really interesting talk. I know nothing about fish, and so it's just really exciting to hear how enthusiastic you are about it. Now I'm interested. Where does one go in Montreal to learn how to shuck oysters?
Well, now nowhere. But soon enough, you know, we did have some, I've worked with my friends at Appetite for Books in Westmount, and we've done an oyster lesson there a couple years ago. We talked about doing another one because it was sold out very quickly. You know, I'll be shucking around town a little bit at my friend's place down here at Pub St. Pierre sometimes, so we'll give you a little lesson. You can follow me on Facebook or Instagram, and when I'm shucking anywhere, you get a free lesson with your oysters.
Okay,
Even your oysters. If you have a shot of Jameson, that's a free lesson too.
All right, thank you.
Merci. Je vois que Diana a levé la main. Diana, je te laisse prendre la parole.
Oui, salut Daniel. En fait, moi, je me disais, toutes les huîtres que vous ouvrez, vous en faites quoi après?
Nous offrons quoi?
Vous en faites quoi après de toutes les huîtres que vous ouvrez?
Avec les compétitions ou surtout avec celui-ci de Guinness World Record?
Both.
Both. Well, all the oysters, tous les huîtres, on les mange tout. Les huîtres qu'on a fait pour le record Guinness, c'était au Île Prince-Édouard. Alors, on a fait une grande soupe avec. So they did use all of them. I will say, this is a great chance to tell you that oysters, you know, there's a debate about oysters and vegan, and if oysters are so great for the environment, why do we eat them? I will tell you very fascinatingly, oysters are the only food on the entire planet that the more you eat them, the better it is for the planet. This happened because of the decimation I was talking about in the 1900s, where all the wild sites were mostly eaten. There's only a handful left. PEI has one, Wellfleet has one, you know, in the South, there are other ones because they grow so quickly. But what happened is that farmers had to step in, just like the Romans did 2,000 years ago, and start aquaculturing oysters. And they had to start regrowing them. They had to start reseeding them and replanting them. And oysters, like I said, they don't take up space and they don't destroy the environment, let's say like, you know, livestock or whatnot. They help the environment. So these oysters, these farmers putting all these oysters back in the environment are cleaning more water, returning the oceans to where they're supposed to be. And that each dollar you spend on an oyster, that goes back to the oyster farmer so he can buy more oysters, so we can plant more seed, so we can have a bigger voice in government or Congress, and we can make a big difference. So by eating oysters, you're actually saving the world. So good job, everyone.
Merci, merci. Karen, j'ai l'impression que tu as des questions. Tu veux les poser à haute voix ou tu veux que je les lise dans le chat?
Ok, je peux poser. Daniel, that was amazing. I love oysters and I will keep eating them, no problem. I was asking, what should we do with the shells?
Ah, yes, okay, yes. Shells are very interesting. We can't do much with the shells here in Montreal. There's in the coasts, when you have all your shells, they put them back in the water and they create ocean reefs. And this especially we're seeing true in the South. We're seeing this in the Chesapeake, where they need to reseed because oysters in those wild scenarios, they look for oyster shells to hop on. So little sperm and egg meet up in the water. They make a little flagellate, and it goes around and it looks for limestone, and it looks for, like ocean shells. So it lands right on top of the shell, and it makes a little thing, and it grows in its shell, and it starts growing, and that's how you get a big oyster reef. So they love shells. If they're not there, they don't have anything to call home. Up here, there's a few different things. I had wanted to work, which hopefully we will maybe at some point, with restaurants, and grind up oyster shells for a couple of things. One is for possibly using it instead of salt on our streets in the winter. The other one, oyster shells can be used once they're ground up for planting and actually for chicken feed. So oyster shells are made of calcium chloride, calcium chlorate, and so they feed it to chickens just like a little extra calcium to make harder shells, and it's great for them.
And actually, I'm not a professional shucker, so when I shuck an oyster, there's like pieces everywhere. So when that's great for me because I can just reuse those, put them in my garden,
Yes, yeah, you can absolutely do that. I have some friends who are the owners of Boda Boda and a couple of other spas, and we went and had an oyster dinner. She kept her oyster shells out all winter and summer, and they bleached beautifully, much like this beautiful shell, and they're great decorations, and she made beautiful art sculpture out of it. So they're lovely, they're amazing.
Merci énormément pour ce partage. Je vois dans le chat que Fred nous dit qu'à l'île Maurice, on trouve des coquillages sous les noix de coco. Et puis, sinon, on a une question d'Alexandra. What's a good argument to help people explore new foods, including oyster?
Well, that is a very good question. I get about... here's the other thing about oysters, which we come back to the earlier conversation that oysters... I could have just served one kind of oyster, and if I didn't care, it's a little bit harder for the first 5 years to shuck a good oyster. And shucking a good oyster is very different from an oyster you'd have otherwise. So it would be like comparing, I try not to eat a lot of meat at all, but a steak versus a steak that might have been cut with a butter knife or a machete. You're going to have an oyster that is perfect in the shell, and it has a character and body to it. And most people have had an oyster that's been mangled, that opened poorly with little bits of shell, and that's not a great experience. So you want a well-shucked oyster. You want a full, healthy oyster at that time of the year. So I get about 10 people a week when I was at the restaurant saying, I don't like oysters. And I said, have an oyster with me. Let me take you through it. And you tell them about the oyster, and you tell them about the characteristics of it, much like I did today. And then they say, wow, and they try it. And you have to be brave to try it. And if you go to those places that I recommended to you, and you tell them that Daniel Notkin sent you, what are the best oysters that I should get? Go get those oysters. They are, I see some people asking, they are insanely healthy for you. So not only are you eating something that is saving the planet, but it is the healthiest, it is quite literally the healthiest thing that you could eat. I try to eat an oyster or two every morning. And each oyster has 9 calories. A cup of oysters has, I think it's 25% of your daily intake of protein, 1 cup, which is about 6 oysters or so. They have magnesium, selenium, vitamin B, vitamin D. They have complete cholesterol, which fights heart attacks and builds a better one. It has zinc. So someone was asking about aphrodisiacs. Yes, so they are aphrodisiacs in as much as you feel great and light when eating them. And when you feel great and light, you want to feel great and light with someone else, and that's awesome. And so this zinc actually, for people who are in stressful jobs or whatever, it promotes a little bit of testosterone. So that testosterone also takes out cortisol from the blood system. So eating oysters actually even lowers stress, which also puts you more in the mood. So there is no aspect of oysters which are not great for you. And in women, they say that the zinc, in men, it helps fertility. In women, it helps to counterbalance aging. Not that any of you need it. You're all stunning however you are, but we all try to be a little healthier. And so be as healthy as you can. It gets the immune system up, which is what we all need right now. So they are spectacular. And you can try oysters in a bunch of ways, don't forget. So if you don't like a raw oyster, you can take an oyster, which I also do. You can pan fry them, dice them up, put them in your eggs. They're spectacular. You can broil them with cheese on top. Doesn't matter. They're a blank canvas. You're going to have the best time in the world and find the way that you love your oyster.
Tu nous as tellement donné faim, c'est incroyable. Merci encore, Daniel, pour ton incroyable discours aujourd'hui. C'était vraiment super. Sans plus tarder, je vais redonner la parole à Nogol pour qu'elle puisse conclure le tout. Merci encore. Nogol.
Yes, I'm here. Yes. So Daniel, first of all, thank you. But I have to say that I've got a question, and someone else got the same question in the chat too. That so many people say that when you are eating the oyster, they're alive. You're basically, when you open them up, they die. So it's just a bit of graphic vision that you have when you're having oyster. I love them, but I want to know, what am I eating? Am I eating them alive? Are they already dead? Do they understand that? Are they upset?
Oysters have a soul and a memory, and you're responsible. No. Oysters have no central nervous system. Okay, so they do not know what's going on. I often, and I appreciate that people, it is a great experience. And listen, it is a little disgusting. That's fine. That's life. It is disgusting that we have to destroy something to nourish ourselves as well. I mean, we cannot survive without breaking something else down. That's ridiculous. But if we have to, it has no central nervous system. It has no cognition. I basically compare it more to plants. So they're actually finding out, that plants have memory, that plants can remember an attack and how to have that attack. If you rip a certain portion of a lettuce leaf, the other side feels it as well. So I compare oysters mostly to, let's say, like Venus flytraps. They open, they filter the water. That's what they do. They are the kind of the plants of the ocean, and they just filter it all out and they close, and that's it. So I would not feel too guilty or worry about it.
Awesome.
I think
That's good news.
I think you're okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for basically the great research-based storytelling, and with lots of passion for sure. Love you, everyone.